All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining me today. Today, of course, I'm Shenandoah County Sheriff Tim Carter, and with me, I've got my friend Roman Rauhala.
Hey there, Sheriff.
How you doing, Roman?
I'm doing good.
And we did a general overview a couple of weeks ago about just general preparation for natural disasters and
Right.
other events. And we wanted to talk a little bit more specific today on water.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess, as we talked the last time, there's only so much water you can store.
Right.
And if you're like on a system like I'm out in the county, so I'm on a well, but still I have to have electricity with my well pump to get water out of the well. So, and by the way, I've had friends of mine that actually get the hand pump alternate, like, in the event your power goes out, you'd have a hand pump there. That's something that my wife and I have actually talked about for years. I need to get that taken care of.
Yeah, it's a great idea. A lot more people are starting to add those to their home site,
right?
Because of what happens if, and years and years ago, that was a normal thing, right? People went out there with a hand pump, and
right,
and then with the invention of what we have now, and who needs that?
Right.
Well, now we're at a point where you just might need it, and
right.
That's a contingency to have for you, for when the power's not on. You're going to go out there and hand pump it, but guess what? You've got water.
Right. So as far as like storage of water, what a person might need, you got any ideas about like what the average person needs per day or what have you?
Right. So we briefly discussed this last time, and the government thinks that a gallon of water per day per person is sufficient. I think that's lowballing it significantly, simply because water is, you could drink more than a gallon a day if it's hot out. What happens then with cooking, because you're going to need water as well for cooking, for hygiene and other things like that. So I think 3 gallons is a better number for water storage. The importance of water. First, we all know we need air to breathe. You got to have air to breathe. Without air, you're gonna be gone quickly.
Right.
Water is so important to us too. Water is, they say on average, so the experts out there in the medical world, survival world, whatever, 72 hours is what you need. You can't go any longer than 72 hours, but that's a really long time. Most people aren't going to make it to that 72-hour mark. Once, without water, once dehydration starts to set in, you start to feel certain ways. And I know it doesn't take long from my own experiences that your kidneys start feeling funny and everything else. You're like, man, I don't feel right. Oh my gosh, I haven't drinking any water. We're talking just about one good day outside in the heat. Maybe mowing grass. We were talking about mowing our grass earlier.
Right.
If you're not properly hydrated, you're gonna easily consume more than that 1 gallon of water that the government suggests. I say government because that's what FEMA puts on their website. 1 gallon of water per day. So back to your question, how do we store large amounts of water? How do we prepare for that? Well, you can only store what you have space for.
Right.
Next step would be, how do we prepare for having to store water if there's an emergency? So most people have bathtubs.
Right.
And if you have enough notice, you can fill that tub up, make sure that it's plugged well.
Right.
And that's a lot of water. There's so many different sized bathtubs, so you're talking many different amounts of gallons here.
Right.
That's a quick way to get some water stored. So sometimes we have advanced, notice that there's going to be a really bad storm coming through. I can tell you through the northern end of the county in Strasburg, we've gone quite a while before without electricity, after certain storms. And if I knew a storm was coming, okay, cool, I'm going to, let me draw that tub full of water and just have that water just in case.
Right. What about like a catchment system, like for rainwater?
Yeah, rain barrels are great.
Right.
So we've got a rain barrel, rain barrels, they hold your outside water.
Right.
So that water's not going to be consumable immediately. You're going to have to treat it, because what's going to happen is that rain is going to hit the roof, and then you've got stuff on your roof. You got bird droppings. You got all kinds of other stuff. It's going to go down through the gutter and be caught in your rain barrel, which is a fantastic way to store water. A lot of people will use that simply, I've got neighbors now, they use their water from a rain barrel to water their plants. You know, they're like, oh, it's rainwater. It is. You know, definitely, that's what it is. You can't drink it as it is. You'll definitely be hurting yourself if you do that without treating the water. So that's two ways. So think about apartment living. We do have a number of complexes here in the county. How do those residents in those apartments, you know, or homes that are very close together, even, how do they, if they don't have the space, how do they store, you know, water and prepare for having that additional water? You know, again, the bathtub is a great idea. If they have pots and pans, filling those, but all of those require advance notice. So what happens when there's some other event, an earthquake? We had that earthquake a number of years ago, and it shook and rattled us here pretty good. I don't recall anybody having any major infrastructure problems. You know, here there was I know there's some homes that had some cracks and this and that, but we still had water and everything else. But what happens if we become the epicenter of that quake, and then we suffer some serious problems? There's no advance notice until it's happening. Right. So now the problem is oh no, what now? So you have to also know your local source of water. Where is water around you? So now you have that resident who didn't have the advance notice, or they were out of town or at work, and they get back to their home and they didn't have time to fill the tub. They didn't have time to fill pots and pans. What now? So that goes back to our first segment, if you will, with water filtration. We went over a couple, you know, utilize bleach, filters. They make water purification tablets, and then boiling water is one of the best ways as well. But now what's around that person? What's around? Is there a pond? I mean, the North Fork's not far from where we are right here, of the Shenandoah. Right. But there's plenty of other areas in the county. North Fork's pretty far away. Right. You know, so it's
a long way to carry water.
It's a long way to carry water.
Yeah.
So I always, you know, say it's wise to know where's water around you. You know, for people who live out in the county, like yourself, Sheriff, you've got the well, so that's where water is. But if you don't have the hand pump or have another means of getting water, if there's no electricity, that water's underground and it's moving, but you don't have access to it. Right. So, you know, is there a pond nearby? Is there, you know, we don't have a lot of lakes. We've got a couple of reservoirs in the county, up in the mountains.
You know, a friend of mine, there are some springs in the county.
There are. There's a number of springs that in the forest, but within the county that I know of, just from going, you know, hiking and this and that. Right. I'm sure there are plenty others on people's properties, and that is a fantastic source of water. But before they automatically go drinking it, I'd recommend make sure water's good, because there are some contaminated springs out there. Right. Simply because of whatever underground construction here and there, stuff that's being leached into some of the systems. You know, we don't have a lot of industry. We have some in the county. They have a lot of chicken farms, poultry farms, and everything. You know, you still got to be careful with, you know, drinking.
What's making its way through.
Right. You know, so you still have to possibly have, if you know it's a good spring and you're already drinking off of it, chances are it's going to remain good. Right. But then again, if you don't want to take a chance, there's, like we said, the tablets. You can use the bleach, the water filtration systems. Okay.
I was going to ask, like, these filtration things, like some of these filtration devices that you get, I mean, they're not forever.
Right. No, they're not.
Certain amount of water would pass through, or amount of times you use them to.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So if we were to go to Walmart right now or Lowe's, you could get, you know, the Brita filter or something similar. Those are not really designed for water we're taking from the river or from a pond or something. Those are designed for making your tap water a little cleaner, taste better, get rid of the bleach taste that you'll get in there from a municipality. And then you have very advanced water filters. You have like the Berkey. Berkey's a brand. We're talking, it's hundreds of dollars, you know, for the water system. And the filters are what's the most expensive, because they can filter out all kinds of bacteria, just about everything. They can filter out your metals and heavy metals that are found in certain waters that you want to have filtered before you're consuming it. You know, there's some Aquamira is another brand, and they very, very similar systems. those filtration systems are really expensive. So there's other ways, if this could just be you're out hiking,
Right.
and you have a hand pump. They have these hand pump water filtration systems. I think MSR is a brand, and there's some other brands. And you just dump the hose in the water and whatever your water source is, and start pumping it.
Right.
And you can drink that water.
Right.
There's so many filtration systems out there. You were talking anything from the straws we talked about last time. Those are 30 and then 300 gallons. For the bigger one, it's 300 gallons that it would clean. But then, so we're talking $12 to $20 some for those types.
Right.
We're talking then up to hundreds of dollars for the Berkey system or the equivalent from some other brands. In between, you can still clean your own water, but you have to be careful. So you need to make sure your source is not contaminated. So if we were hiking or on the move for whatever reason, and you can see a sheen of oil or some discoloration on top of water, we can assume that water's been contaminated, and it's not even worth trying to. There's no point in trying to clean it or purify because we don't know what that chemical compound is that's contaminated the water. Or the water can look fine, but then if we see wildlife around it or fish in it, frogs or whatever that are floating, we don't want to mess with that water. I mean, it doesn't matter how advanced our system is. If it's not top military grade, which is not going to be what we have,
Right.
For cleaning waters, then you don't want to mess with that water.
Right. Okay.
So, there's easy ways to clean standing water. So say we found that pond and we're like, all right, let's get some water. Well, there could be a lot of leaves and debris in it and stuff, and that's where you would want to use a bandana. Mm-hmm. A bandana can be used for a million different things in the survival world. We could have a class. We could talk about just a bandana and its uses, for 30 minutes, if not longer. But, you want to use something to separate the junk in the water. So if we take a coffee can worth of water out of this pond, we're going to probably get sediment, leaf particles, this, that, the other, bugs, who knows. And then we want to pour it into another container, with that bandana on top of it, pull a taunt.
Right.
So you're filtering. That's your first stage of filtering at that point. You're filtering out all that debris and everything we just talked about, and then we can go on to purifying that water. So then we can boil it or utilize the different chemicals that we can use or whatever, So that's just another thing.
Okay.
When it comes to your own filtration of water, it's not always just a one-step deal. The one-step deal, like we talked about with boiling or utilizing the bleach or whatever, that's like, okay, it's out of a tap, or an easy source that we think, there's typically it's clean water, but now we're questioning it because the infrastructure has collapsed or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
So, back to the original question, how do we prepare for, how do we get ready for or store the water? Storage, that's always the, you mentioned it last time too, and then first thing here today, space, right?
Capacity.
Capacity. Right. So the next step is to make sure you have the means to store water. And I was in Walmart. It was after our last one. I decided to walk through the camping area the last time we talked after that. And I was like, all right, they actually have collapsible water jugs. They're like 2 gallons. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they collapse way down, and they're made out of a PBA-free material, so you don't have the certain chemicals leaching into your water like certain water bottles have. I think nowadays a big thing, like even this brand here, this is a PBA-free water bottle. They've realized that.
Oh my!
They've realized that PBAs are not good for us, and they've been used in plastics forever. And now you can get your throwaway water bottles that are PBA-free. That also helps actually prevent stuff leaching into the water when it's hit with sunlight, because very often that's, they'll tell you shouldn't leave your bottled water in the sunlight because, well, why? Because it's going to get hot. Well, it's going to get hot, and then it's also going to have other chemicals coming out of the plastic into the water.
Okay.
So, yeah. But they had those big containers at Walmart, and I was like, wow, and they're for camping, right?
Right.
But those are the things people could have, on hand. They still have to get the water, but that's going to be dependent on the situation, right? So if they can still draw their water out of their tap, but it may not be clean. Well, you can now clean it. You can boil it and then store it in your containers or whatever the case. And then, if you have a hand pump, you could go down to your hand pump and, and get your water that way. But people have to be ready, just like we've talked about with food and other stuff. You have to think ahead and go, all right, I've got to store some water. I may have to store a lot of water, and how do I do that? Mm-hmm. What do I have to use? What are the containers? There's a lot of stuff out there.
Right. Okay.
There's Rubbermaid bins. I'm sure your guys would have seen this down at Katrina. There were people filling those big Rubbermaid containers with water. It may not have been potable, or it could be consumed for drinking.
Right.
But it could have been used for hygiene, or they could clean it. They could boil it or whatever. Right. Now it's drinkable.
Right.
So anything that can hold the water, that you could potentially put a lid on it while it's being stored. So you're not going to carry around that Rubbermaid container, because when that thing's full of water, it's going to be very, very heavy.
Right.
But, that's just another thing. People have different, I think we could find in the average home, people are utilizing some type of large storage bin or container for something. It may not have, it may have, we got one in the garage when the kids were younger, and it's got like toys and stuff in it. Empty that out, throw water in there, so there's a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to specifically be meant to hold water. It just has to have the ability to hold the volume, so you have the water.
So you have something.
And so you have something, and then you may have to just clean it from there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot. Basically anything that can hold a substance that's solid. So pots, pans, your those containers.
Right. Yeah. You have to really start thinking about things that you don't normally think about.
Right. Right. Think outside the box, and that's the whole. I like to say that being able to survive is being able to adapt. So you have to look at what you have, look at what the problem is, and then start finding the solutions. And very often, we find solutions sitting right in front of us. Sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, why don't we just do this and that? Now we have water storage solution.
Right.
Of course, that's only going to get you so much. But, I know that your guys had seen, they set up the water issuance points where they were giving out water. So now people would go, and so we would hope that if there was something catastrophic that happened right here, hit us right in Shenandoah County, that ultimately they'd activate the National Guard, and then they'd bring in, the government and everything. And that's if things are going well. If we're talking about an isolated incidents where, for example, those fires are pretty bad, and that affected a lot of people.
And you got to remember, where we live, we're not usually first on the list to get resources.
We're not.
I don't think the average person understands that.
Right.
We're just where we are, and the population density. It's not first on the list.
No, it's not. The only way that would happen is if we were the only ones impacted.
Right. Right.
If it was just once again, I don't know, a major storm comes through and just wreaks unfortunate havoc through this region, through our area.
Right. Then you'd be first on the list.
Then we'd be first on the list. But when we're talking a much larger scale event, man-made or natural, hopefully more natural than man-made, but, we're not going to be first on the list because we don't have that population density.
And I don't think the average person, understands. They don't understand, you're going to get the federal government's going to go to where the population density is the most, and it's going to also go to where the issue is the most hurtful, and that may not be you.
Right.
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 Maybe on the outskirts of that.
Right.
Right.
It's going to be whatever, I think whatever local organizations have, and I know we have different churches that have set up different things to provide to those in need.
Right.
And they may have some stuff, but that's going to run out very quickly.
That's all more important that people begin to understand that you may be on your own for a while.
You're going to be your own rescuer.
Right.
You're going to be.
You got to self-rescue. Exactly.
You have to self-rescue, and you have to think that, nobody else is coming. It's up to me. You know? So once again, we talked about it briefly last time, but identify who's in your tribe, and you have to work out a plan with them. And that plan goes as far as also what we talked about. For example, our daughters are going to be down in Lynchburg. So that's a ways away from here. They're going to be attending school, and I know that we have to have a plan if something goes sideways. and and it gets really bad, we have to be able to have that plan to get to them and get them out.
Right.
Get them back to the tribe, to the family.
Right.
Because it's going to be up to us to support our own and take care of our own, protect our own, provide for our own, and everything else. So that's exactly, I think that's what we're I guess that's a message we're trying to get across to people. You have
Exactly.
you have to be as prepared as you can.
Right. You can't rely on the government to do it all.
No,
it's
no.
just not, if it's that bad, it's going to be even overwhelming to the government.
Yeah, it totally is. And I really don't like watching your mainstream news outlets and stuff out there, but you can see it. It just, a lot of events occur, and very often people are waiting for the government, and it doesn't always work out where they come in and help. Or once again, like you said, Sheriff, if you're not the main area that's hit, you're still been affected, but you don't have the population density. You're not a city, if you will. You're going to get very limited help.
Right. Right.
And there's only so much. There's only so much they're going to be able to do for you anyway.
Okay.
And after our 2 days, so if it happens, and after 2 days the grocery stores are empty and everything else, we hope people are ready. We hope they've got food, they've got the water, they've got the means to get the water, purify the water, whatever, and then also protect themselves. I know we haven't really talked about that much, but that's something else.
Right. Exactly.
That's all part of the plan you have to have in place.
Right.
To protect you and yours.
Again, this is Shenandoah County Sheriff Tim Carter. You can find this and all of our other podcasts on my YouTube channel at Timothy Carter. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe so you can get new show notifications. Thanks so much.